course, when John comes back to work, if he comes back, everybody's going to be like, "Hey, John, I heard you participated in this badass experiment and it totally made you much cooler." And then John's going to be like, "Yeah, it was rad, and everybody who misses it is a loser."
What is up, everybody? This is Anthony with VR 365. What is going on? It is April 14th. And, let me hold on for a second here. I'm still recovering. I just had to scarf down a little bit of food before I started this thing up because I knew I wouldn't be able to make it all the way through. Okay, so this is kind of a last minute thing that is popping off. You might remember yesterday, let me move my camera a little bit this way. You guys might remember yesterday at the very end of the show, I said, man, I'd really like a guest for Sunday because Sunday is always a difficult show because I wake up in the morning, it's all about doing the VR Roundtable episode. That is the primary deal, right? And VR Roundtable, it's an early show for me. I basically am able to take a shower, get ready, have a little bit of breakfast, and then start the VR Roundtable episode. And you know, I'm on the West Coast. They're East Coast. They're in England. They've been up for hours. It's later in the day for them. And so it's always kind of a scramble. And then so when it comes to the Sunday Funday episode, a lot of times I'm not really ready. I don't have a thumbnail set up. I don't have any kind of story set up. And so that's why it's kind of Sunday Funday, because it's pretty much like I got to wing it. And so that's kind of what we're doing here on this Sunday. But guess what, folks? I got a special guest. Conrad Lawrence is going to join me. Now, I'm guessing that I'm probably not going to get video. We might try to get video here, but we'll see what happens. If we don't get video, then it'll just be audio only. I've been having some Skype problems, so we did have Chris Richardson on the show. We had actual video for Chris Richardson, and the reason we did, it was an older version of Skype, and it's just there's Skype problems that are going on, right? But I will figure it out. I'm going to figure out these Skype problems, probably not right now, but I will figure it out at least hopefully prior to Tuesday. I believe on Tuesday is when we're going to have Alex from Play PSVR, and I got to get my video, Skype, I got to get that situation figured out prior to Alex coming on, because I don't just want to have his voice, I want to have video and everything too. So I'm going to figure that out. I absolutely will figure that out, but maybe not for this episode. So just kind of want to let you guys know that. Okay, so let me go ahead and try to call, let's try to call Conrad and let's see if we can get him on the show, and we'll see what happens here. So I'm going to go ahead and call him and we'll see what happens. Hello? Hello? Conrad, what's up? Okay, so we don't have you in the show yet. Hold on a second. I'm going to see, let me see here. I'm going to try. So do you have a camera running at all, or you're not even bothering with it? Oh, okay, fine. Then we'll forget about the camera aspect. We won't worry about that. So we'll just do audio only. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get your audio feed up in here. So Conrad, how's your weekend going?
That's not too bad. A little quiet around here.
Okay, let me see. So why don't I do this? I'm going to start off with a question. And see, we want to try to get our audio levels dialed in, and I probably have audio dialed in okay. But what I'll do is I'm going to start this off with a question about your gaming history prior to anything VR. So before VR came along, what's your gaming history? And then everybody in chat, let me know if I need to like turn his volume up or turn his volume down. So the question is, what was your gaming history prior to all the VR stuff happening?
I've been gaming as long as I've been able to game. So when the Atari 2600 came out, I was all into that. When the Nintendo came out, I was all into that. Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Sega CD, all of it, but the expensive ones like the 3DO.
Ah,
But
you missed out. 1994 was a special year for Panasonic 3DO.
yeah, I tried one.
Oh, okay. You tried one. Okay,
Yeah.
so like going back in your history, like you've mentioned a lot of video gaming consoles, but it's weird because like I think of a lot of people have a history where they were mostly on computers. I was mostly on video game consoles personally, and then I ended up going to computers for a couple of years, then I went back to consoles, then back to computers. What about you? Were you primarily a console guy for a lot of your years?
I was a console guy until 1994, and that's when I played. I think it was X-Wing at the time, and a buddy of mine showed me that, and I said, "That's it. I have to get a computer. I have to sell off all my consoles so I can get a new sound card for the computer, so I can get a CD drive for the computer," and that's when I became a PC gamer.
Okay, so about 1994, you went to the dark side. Okay,
Exactly.
my question though, did you ever moonlight back on consoles, or were you were all in on PC and like you missed out on like PlayStation, PlayStation 2, the original Xbox, or what about all of that?
Eventually, I'd get a console like the PlayStation. The first PlayStation I got when Final Fantasy VII came out. So, and that's pretty much all I played on that. It was a waste of money, really. Um, PlayStation 2, I didn't get until the PlayStation 3 had been out for a couple of years. And I did get back into console gaming with the PlayStation 3 and got away from PC gaming for a couple of years, but it was about affordability then.
Okay. Well, going back to like your when you got into PC gaming around 1994, that was a little bit before the graphics card era kind of really kicked off with like the 3D FX and all of that.
Yeah.
Do you remember those years with like the 3D FX? Did you get caught up in all? Were you buying like voodoo cards and all? Did you get caught up in all of that?
Yeah, I did. I made a couple of mistakes. Well, one major mistake because I bought an ATI Rage 2, I think it was, and it turns out that supported very few games. So I learned from that, got into the Voodoo line, and did the Quake mod with the I can't remember what it was called now, but the graphics update for 3D cards, and from there, yeah, I got caught up in it big time.
Yeah, it's funny. We're on a VR show right now, and people, like a lot of people probably don't care about a lot of this stuff. But I was a 3DFX guy for a brief minute there. I'll just give you a quick little story of what happened. So I had a PlayStation 1 and I had Tomb Raider had just came out. So this was early 1996, probably like the spring of 1996. I had a PlayStation 1. I had Tomb Raider. I was playing Tomb Raider. It was pixelated as hell, but I didn't know any better. I was playing on my computer, but I had a good buddy. I mean, I was playing on my PlayStation, my regular play, on a regular TV. I did have like a S video cable, so I was getting pretty decent video there. But I had a buddy that had a computer, and he was like, dude, you've got to come over to my house because he's seen Tomb Raider at my house on PlayStation. And he was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. And then I guess he ended up getting Tomb Raider for his computer. And he had a 3DFX card. And he had the Windows. Do you remember the Windows Sidewinder control? It was like the first legit controller for PCs, like a gamepad. Do you remember that?
I do, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so he had one of those, right? And because I was not going to try to play Tomb Raider on like a keyboard or something, I wanted like an actual controller. And so he's like, dude, you got to come over to my house. You got to see this. And I went over to his house and he had like one of those NEC computer monitor, like a really good computer monitor, right? Like a 17-inch, like super expensive, but really crystal clear. And he had Tomb Raider running on the damn thing. And I saw it and I played it and I was like, God damn, you just ruined my PlayStation. My PlayStation will never be the same. I've just seen what graphics can look like on the 3DFX, Voodoo, and all of that. And that's when I fell down that rabbit hole. And I ended up building a computer I think it was very late in 1996. I built my very first computer, had the Voodoo, all of that. I remember playing. Do you remember Jedi Knight? Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight. Do you remember that game?
Yeah, I have a CD of it around here somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, dude, that was the game that freaking captured my attention back then, and I started to really get into PC games. But I will admit, like, I was into PC games, but I was basically playing console games on PC for the better graphics. I wasn't really a true PC guy. But back in your days, like, you remember this time that I'm talking about, because you got in at 1994, which was a little bit earlier, were you more, I mean, I know you had that console background before that, but did you get into more of the PC, you might say PC-ass PC games, Did you get more into those?
Yes, I did, because you had games like Command & Conquer coming around at the time. The shooter games, Wolfenstein, Doom. What else was there? Well, Flight Sims. Flight Sims was big on the PC at the time. So you had X-Wing, TIE Fighter, Wing Commander, mostly Space Sims there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started getting into those. I found those games much more entertaining. And graphic adventures. I loved graphic adventures in those days. The LucasArts games, the Sierra games, all of that stuff.
Yeah, man, I like that's I missed all of that. Like, like when Myst, remember when Myst came out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just was I liked the simplicity, I think, of just like a controller and just some buttons. And like, I've always been the type where I kind of just want to get into a game and just start playing the damn game. Like, I don't want to read menus and, all that.
Yeah, I understand the attraction of that, because a lot of people don't want to fiddle. And there is a lot of fiddling. Like, getting those CD-ROM drives to work back in 1994, it was a pain in the ass. You had to write BAT files. You had to make sure your IRQs were set up correctly. It was a pain.
Yeah. Do you remember, like, just the days of, because you know what, back when I was in the 3DFX days, I was the guy that was upgrading my computer like every 5 months. Were you doing that too?
Yeah, I had a whole new computer probably every 18 months. Like, I'd replace everything probably every 18 months. Computers were advancing so quickly back then. It was strange that I was able to keep up at all.
Yeah, probably once, like, so Shiny Robot says, sorry, who's on chat, guys? We are talking live with Conrad Lawrence, longtime member of our chat, longtime listener, viewer, watcher of the show. And he reached out to me a while back about being on the show, and so we have him on now. So we're talking to Conrad Lawrence, and we're going to get into VR stuff. So just hold on a second, guys. I just wanted to kind of do a little background coverage here. Yeah, I did see Tiger Woods won the Masters, which that's kind of crazy.
Oh, that's a big deal. Holy crap.
Yeah, can you believe that? Talk about a comeback. That's going to be like all over the news for a while. But yeah, so going back into the PC upgrading cycle, because I remember back in those days, what I would do is I might live with like my Pentium processor that I had, and live with that for a while. But graphics cards, man, every 7-8 months I had to get whatever the newest one was.
Yeah, I found that processors were upgrading so fast back then too. You go from, I started out with a 33 megahertz, then you go to 66, and then 100, then you're getting into the Pentium 2 200s, and it was a crazy time to be a PC gamer.
My very first, the first build that I made, it was a Pentium 200 MMX is what it was called. That was my starter.
Yeah, I built the same computer for my brother.
Okay, yeah.
That was his first computer.
Yeah, those were the good old days, and you would there was actual sound cards and stuff, and
yeah, it was strange. There was peripherals galore.
Crazy. Okay, so let's go ahead and fast forward a long time. Let's jump into the 2010s, 2011s. Let's jump into that kind of range. And so, my question now is because we had VR, like way back in the early 90s, there was VR. Now, I personally never experienced it myself, but I was reading I was addicted to all the gaming magazines. I would get Electronic Gaming Monthly, Game Pro, Next Generation, Game Fan, all these. I was a nutcase, right? And
I was the same way. I had all of the magazines.
Okay.
Every month.
Yeah, Video Games and Computer Entertainment. Do you remember that one?
Not that one in particular,
Okay.
but the EGMs and all of them.
But
except that one.
Okay, yeah, and so you would be reading these magazines, and they would mention Dactyl Nightmare and virtual reality and stuff like that.
And that's my first VR experience, Dactyl Nightmare.
Oh, so
I guess a lot of people my age.
You actually played it?
Yeah, at a bar while drunk. That was my first VR experience.
Oh wow! Did you Earl?
No, I didn't. I know.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it was a terrible experience. I'll give it that.
Yeah. So, what part of are you? I'm assuming you're in the USA, but I don't know. Where are you located?
No, I'm Atlantic Canada. I'm in a time zone east of Eastern time zone. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you're up in Canada. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and you're in the Eastern time zone there. Okay, so is that where you experienced? Have you been there all your life, pretty much?
Pretty much, except for 4 or 5 years. I lived in Toronto after high school.
Okay, where did you experience the VR in the 90s?
In Toronto.
Toronto. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so so you did experience VR way the hell back then, and then VR basically disappeared. We kind of thought it was it wasn't ready for prime time, and most of us kind of completely forgot about it.
And I agree with the decision that it wasn't ready. I tried a VFX1, I think it was called. That was at-home virtual reality in the 90s. I tried that. That wasn't nearly ready.
So you got pretty deep into it then, huh?
I've been waiting for VR since before VR was a thing, as far as I'm concerned. I grew up on Star Wars and Buck Rogers and all that stuff, and all I wanted to do was sit in a cockpit and fly in space and shoot at something. I wanted to go down the trench of the Death Star and have it surround me.
Did you ever imagine in your lifetime you'd actually see that?
I did. I could see the future, and I think back in the 90s gave us a brief glimpse, and I didn't expect it to come about the way it did, but I knew we'd get there eventually.
Isn't it amazing? I feel like it's amazing to me that, if somebody went back to the mid-90s and said, Anthony, you're going to be inside these video games. You're physically going to be inside them. The ceiling is going to be above you. You're going to be standing on the floor. You're going to see your hands, and you're going to be inside these video game worlds. I mean, it's freaking incredible. But having said all of what I just said now, there's other people, you put them in VR, and they're mildly amused, and it doesn't do anything for them. Is it just there's two different kinds of people in the world? There's us that are oh my God, this is incredible. And then there's everybody else. What's the deal with that?
I wish I could put my finger on it, because I don't know why everybody isn't fascinated with this technology. My wife could care less. My oldest daughter could care less. My son, he likes it, but he's severely autistic, so he likes anything like that. So, and my youngest daughter is the only one that showed any interest in it whatsoever. But gamers, I don't understand why they don't want to be in VR.
Yeah,
I can't get it.
Well, the thing is, if you look on Reddit, and I think VR gaming, if you looked at the population of VR gaming, I think it skews a bit older. I'm in my late 40s, right? But there's a lot of people that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all kinds of ages all around there that have really gotten into VR. And I think part of it, it skews a bit older because I think we were all there back in the Atari days, and back in the Super Nintendo days, and we kind of saw the birth of this video gaming medium, and we kind of all dreamed about this future world where man, one day we're actually going to be inside these freaking games, and it's going to be like a living world that's living and breathing around us, and we're going to be in there. And so then it started to arrive, And so a lot of us old timers, you might say, we got jazzed up by this because it's like, wow, this is actually happening in our lifetime. This is incredible. Do you think that it skews older because of that reason? Because we kind of grew up with this and we're actually like realizing this incredible future right before our eyes?
I think people need to be tolerant for VR, because there's a lot of work to VR. There's owning the computer, there's owning the headset, and then everything to actually get into a VR game, I guess. And I don't know if younger people have the patience for that or something. I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe if we get the Call of Duty, the AAA Call of Duty game that you can only play in VR, maybe that's what it takes to bring everybody else in. Because I find shooters being the most popular form of video game right now, and no really good VR implementation of a shooter is the reason why we're not seeing a bigger mass market.
Yeah, it's there. There's so many different ways you can analyze it. I just threw on a trailer right now. This is Contractors VR. You know, it's really popular. A lot of people are playing it, and I have teenagers, and they play a lot of these fast action, you know, first person shooters, Fortnite, and all these types of things. And I've put them in this, and they've checked it out, but ultimately they go back to what they've always done. And you know what? I think it's complicated. I think there's so many little layers to this onion of why they're not into it. And I think one of the big reasons they're not into it is because, like, for example, my kids, they could get into it, but they know that none of their friends are going to have this. You know,
exactly.
And so it's like that chicken and egg thing, you know, and like these younger gamers now, you got to be online, you got to be with your friends, you know, like my sons, they don't care about single player games. Like single player games don't even enter their mind, you know?
Yeah. And I'm kind of like that as well. All the flight simming stuff I do it mostly with friends online. So.
Okay, yeah. So going back to this like second wave of VR. So you were aware of VR and you've been aware of VR all before it made its second comeback. When were you first aware of the second comeback of VR?
Well, John Carmack's little demo in 2012, I believe it was. Yeah, 2012. And as soon as I heard about that, I missed all the meant to be seen 3D forms and stuff like that. So as soon as John Carmack showed up with this headset, that bang, here it is. It's like if John Carmack can talk about this thing, it's moving.
Yeah. That's kind of where I picked up on it too. I was I always listen to this podcast called the Giant Bombcast, you know, one of the most popular.
Same here.
Yeah. And I heard there was an episode on there. It was Brad Shoemaker. I believe he went to, I don't know if it was like an E3 or which trade show it was, but he talked to Carmack and he talked to who I believe was Palmer Luckey at the time. Like he was just talking to him as like some young kid, you know? And, and I was listening to that episode and I was like mildly amused. Oh my God, they're really going to try VR again. You know, I thought, and I was thinking Doom 3. The other thing I was thinking too, is is this going to scare the living crap out? Like, could I even deal with that? Like, I was trying to think, if you put me inside the world of Doom 3, am I going to freaking just spaz out and I won't be able to deal with it? I was kind of worried about VR. Did you ever think about that, like when they were first talking about all this?
Not at all. I don't like the horror games, but I would have done anything to get into VR at the time.
Okay, so you found out about this John Carmack thing. Now, when you started hearing about that, so you were in it pretty early. The question is like, did you follow like the Kickstarter and all that? Did you get a DC1? Like, or
I followed everything, but I didn't get any of the development kits.
Okay.
I waited for the commercial version to come out. I tried the DK one. A fellow local to me was selling one, and I said, "Look, I'll give you $20 if you give me a demo." And he said, "No, you don't have to pay me. I'll give you a demo anyway." And I was over there for 3 hours one afternoon. And then when he got his DK2, he did the same thing, called me back. And when he got his Vive, he called me back again, said, "Look, come try it out. I know you're interested."
Oh, okay. Okay, so like when the actual Oculus Rift launched, so this is like early 2016, March
Yeah,
28th or whatever, and then
yeah.
the Vive launched on April 5th, 2016. We're now 3 years after that. So when that happened, you didn't have a VR headset right then.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't get my headset until spring of 2017.
Okay, so well, my question then, why so late? Like you obviously were really into this stuff. Why not be there on day one?
Well, I needed the computer first of all.
Okay.
I had a PC, but it wasn't powerful enough to run VR. So I got that in spring 2016, and then a year later, spring 2017, I finally got a Vive, and I've, yeah, I won't. What we were talking about earlier with computers and upgrading so often in the 90s. Well, ever since I got VR, it's been the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, well, remember you mentioned at one time that you kind of went back to the console world. What year? Like which console did you?
Oh yeah. So from 2008 to 2011, I had a PlayStation 3.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's good. All my friends at work were playing PlayStation 3. My computer was getting old at the time, so instead of investing in a new computer, I said I'm going to try this PlayStation 3 because they were talking about Burnout Paradise and Uncharted,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
these are games I wanted to try.
You know, I imagine like well, I'm gonna assume that you're probably similar to me in a way where it's like you probably went back to console gaming, right? And with this PlayStation 3 and you started screwing around with it. And then maybe you had a realization that, you know what, I don't really need a computer anymore. They're kind of good enough now with this home stuff. And so you kind of get used to that. And then so this idea that you're going to have to go build a powerful ass computer again and you're going to have to get into this like race of trying to like build a behemoth of a computer probably weren't too excited about that, right?
Yeah, I was because I got back into PC gaming in 2011 because my wife, where she works, she they were getting rid of old computers, and she said, "Do you want one?" And I said, "Sure, bring it home and see what it is." Right, and it turned out to be an i7, and they were just getting rid of them, and it's like, holy crap! So I upgraded the video card and right back into PC gaming. And one of the first games I bought was called IL-2 Sturmovik Cliffs of Dover, and that's when I started getting into the flight sim stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so like your number one game. So here's the thing on the whole flight sim thing. I'm probably the wrong guy to be interviewing you on this stuff because I've always heard of like DCS World and like what you just said, the IL Stormovic.
IL-2 stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've heard of all these games. I've heard them mentioned a million times, but I don't know. For me, it's always like a different category of gaming where it's like I it's kind of like the same thing as like Elite Dangerous and stuff. Okay, Derek Schmeltzer is saying, who is the guest? The guest is Conrad Lawrence, and over here on the upper right side of the screen where you might see Breath of the Wild, it's going to scroll by, but you will see Conrad Lawrence is our guest. He's on air via Skype, so just want to let people know. Okay, but yeah, like thinking about like Elite Dangerous and like some of these other games, it just to me, whenever I've thought about them, I just think, oh, the investment that you've got to make in unders, like you've got to invest hours just to get the thing up and running, right?
Exactly, yeah. To understand it all, and before that, you have to invest in the gear to actually play it. So you got joysticks and throttle controls, um, switch panels if you want to go that far, head tracking. Before you even get into VR, I built a head tracking rig so I could use my head to look around in the game. So every step I take, everything I built was to get more immersed in the game, and VR hopefully is the last step to becoming fully immersed.
Yeah, so thinking of the environment of all the people that are into those kinds of games that you're talking about, these simulator type games, you would
Yeah,
think you would think that all of them would basically move to VR because I mean, isn't it like the ultimate of what you're trying to do in the first damn place, right? Like cuz
yeah,
aren't they all
exactly.
like three monitor guys and.
Oh, no, not all of us, but they do. They spend a lot of money in equipment, and I think like the community outside of simulation has been poo-pooing VR, but within the community, the flight sim community, the driving sim community, I think whether they use it or not, they accept it. They understand what it is that people who are into VR get out of it.
Now, do some of them though? Do some of them say, "Well, I understand why people are using VR, but I don't use it because of this or because of that. Like it's still not ready yet, or something." Because I heard some interview where they were talking to a guy that was really into racing simulators, and he was like, "Well, I like VR, but you can't do blank." And I don't remember what it was, but he's like, "I still use my 3-monitor setup because VR doesn't quite do blank yet." Do you find the same thing with like the flight sims and stuff? Like some people are still holding on to triple monitors and things like that?
Yeah, I do, because one of the guys I fly with, he got a Vive on pretty much day one, I think, and he doesn't use it anymore. He switched to a 4K monitor, and he doesn't have his Vive plugged in at all. He lent it to one of the other guys that I fly with, and he hasn't even plugged it in. So, even though they accept it and they don't say anything negative about it, there's something that they don't get that I do get that makes me, once I tried VR, I can't fly without VR now.
Do you think it's like a friction thing? Because I mean, we deal with that in all aspects of VR.
Well, I know the guy that bought it. A big friction was his wife. She didn't like him having it all set up. They're in a small place as it is, and he was using stands because he couldn't drill holes in the walls. And so their little office area would have these 2 stands with the the Vive lighthouses on them, and the headset would be wherever it was, and it just got to be too much clutter for her, I guess.
So I'm looking at this trailer right now for DCS World. It looks incredible. I mean, just looking at these visuals, does it actually look this good in VR? And do you need a 2080 Ti to run this damn thing?
Oh, I have a 1080 Ti, and I don't know if I could get it to look that good. But in VR, no, you're going to turn down your settings in VR for sure.
Okay.
But the immersion, the sense of scale, everything that goes along with VR, the sense of depth, just makes it so much better, in my opinion, regardless of what the fidelity. It's like the fidelity of the game.
Yeah.
I could go back and play X-Wing in VR now and live with those graphics if I could get immersed in that X-Wing game.
Yeah. So do you use a HOTAS with this when you're playing it?
I do.
Okay.
I have a hands-on throttle and stick. My stick itself is a custom-made force feedback stick. The throttle is store-bought, and then I have a bunch of other peripherals, rudder pedals, and button panels, switch panels.
Do you think so? I mean, one of the things I thought, like when VR came back, and we were in the early days of VR, and we had these controllers that had the little sensors on them and all that. I immediately thought we were going to have steering wheels that were going to have sensors on them. You know what I mean?
So did I.
So
did I.
And like HOTASes and all of that, and where like you would sit in your chair and your HOTAS would be there, and it's in VR, and it's perfectly tracked in the right spot, and you grab it, and the immersion is really great. How does that work right now for you? Do you have it? I mean, have you moved it into like the exact position where it's kind of like it would be tracked almost, but
I sort of. I have my stick center mounted, and most of the planes I fly have center mounted sticks, so what I see in game kind of matches where my hand is. The main thing I do is the little nose flap in the Vive that comes out. So I take that out, and I have a nice gap I can look at, so I can look down, see all my buttons and switches, my keyboard, and it works really, really well.
Yeah. Okay. So what about like, are people going off the deep end here and actually creating full-on cockpits with like you would think with all the little buttons and stuff? Do you remember the Steel Battalion controller that was on like?
I do.
Okay. Is anybody going to that level? Can you do that? Is that possible?
You can do that. It's incredible what some of the guys are creating. Like even without the VR experience. Um, and that, I'm going to talk about something. Cast AR. Have you ever heard of it? Jerry Ellsworth's
Y-
old product.
yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Okay, I was so hyped for that technology because I wanted because I have a cockpit here. It's not a fancy cockpit, but I have a cockpit. And I was so hyped to be able to just drop this screen that she was using from my ceiling, surround my cockpit. I'd have all my controls in plain sight, and around me, I'd have the flight simulator as it's projected from the computer. And I was so disappointed when Cast AR failed that I still would have got VR, but I thought what she offered was sort of the best of both worlds.
Yeah. I think they're trying to make a comeback actually, or
Yeah,
they're
the Tilt 5,
yeah. Okay.
but I think they're going for a desktop, tabletop type gaming experience now. So
Yeah. Okay. Jarillo in chat says, "What's it on Steam? I don't see it." And I'm gonna switch over here really quick. Here's our webby browser thing here, and this is it. DCS World Steam Edition.
yeah,
Is that's the right one there?
that's right. Yeah, for the free version, if you're just gonna play free, get the
Yeah.
Steam edition. But if you're gonna pay for anything, I'd go to the website itself and get it because their updates come out faster.
Okay, I see. Yeah, so it says the VR mode for this game requires the use of a gamepad or a keyboard and mouse. And then, of
Yeah.
course, if you have a HOTAS, you're better off there as well.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Okay. Let's see. Damn, now I forgot what I was going to ask you. Well, I think we were talking about like cockpits and stuff and trying to make it as real as humanly possible.
Yeah, and I do. I try that. So, I build panels and stuff just so that what I see in game kind of matches the real world.
Yeah. What do you think, like, what about, like, chairs and stuff? Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think. You're in an airplane. I think more of chairs when you're in, like, racing games, like for, vibration and movement and things like that.
Yeah.
Is that something that you think about at all with these kinds of games? And I'm sure you can go off the deep end with that as well, right?
Oh, for sure. It's like I have a car seat on my setup right now. It's out of a 1984 BMW, so I'm told. Um, but yeah, I built my own bass shaker that I have under the seat. So, and I run a piece of software so that in DCS world, when I'm rolling down the taxiway, I can feel little bumps underneath me and stuff like that. When I pull the trigger on the gun, it shakes. So anything to add immersion, I'm all for. And because I'm so handy, I'm technically minded. I can build all this stuff for myself.
That's a bonus. That is a huge
It
bonus.
definitely, because to pay for it is outrageous.
Yeah. See, I am not technically minded. I'd have some major problems there. I would need to somehow get somebody else to build it for me. Looking at DCS World, so I mean, a lot of it looks air-based, but you also see these tanks and stuff. Can you actually, like, if somebody was like, I don't give a damn about planes, I just want to screw around with tanks, can you do that?
I'm not. There is an add-on for it called Combined Arms. I haven't played it, so I'm not exactly sure how that works. But IL-2 Sturmovik, they have tanks in their simulation that you can actually control in VR.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all World War II stuff, but it's pretty impressive.
Okay, so from a simulation standpoint, how hardcore is this? Like in terms of like taking off the runway, landing, like and all the little things that you gotta enable and all the little indicators and every little aspect of it. Is it like trying to go all the way, or like does it have a little bit of an arcadey factor, or is it really trying to be hardcore?
It's really hardcore. There is an arcade type setting in it. I've never played with it, to be honest, but they call it when you're setting up your controls, they have game and they have sim controls. So I have no idea what the game side of that is, so I can't really speak to it, but I assume it's just like setting up a stick and a single throttle and just flying around. I have no idea really, but yeah, it's study level. If you're learning, like right now I'm doing the F-18 stuff. Learning the F-18 in the game is supposed to track to the real world pretty accurately.
I see. Have you ever tried any of the really arcadey games like the Ace Combats or anything? And I'm just curious if you've tried them, just like to compare and contrast between the two.
Oh yeah, that's how I got started into all this because I liked Crimson Skies, I think. Yeah, it's Crimson Skies and what was the other one? But Ace Combat. But there was another one I used. Birds of Prey on PlayStation 3, and I found myself more attracted to the hardcore side of that. It still was arcadey, but the one where it let you raise and lower your landing gear or raise and lower your flaps and stuff like that. I liked that type of immersion, and that was sort of my jumping point into hardcore PC simming.
Okay. So like in these games you got to like be aware of your fuel levels and all kinds of things, right? I mean, they try to
Yeah,
go all the way.
yeah, and we ran into a situation last night where we were chasing a couple of contacts and we had to stop and turn around because we didn't have enough fuel. So
What
yeah,
is your what headset are you using right now?
a Vive.
A Vive, like regular old Vive, standard Vive.
Yeah, OG Vive.
OG
Yeah.
Vive. Okay. And so one of the things that I hear a lot about, like not being a sim guy, but like the HP Reverb, right? And the Acer Compact, or what is it? Concept D. I keep calling it Compact D.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's these new headsets that are coming out eventually that, 2160 by 2160 per eye. And one of the things that you'll hear is that these are probably going to be like a godsend for people like you, just to be able to see like all the indicators clearer. What do you think?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if DCS World was the first to offer like the super sampling slider, but that made a huge difference at the time. But having these 2160 by 2160 panels per eye will be huge because I think we'll be able to turn down the super sampling and still be able to see everything and hopefully get a frame rate equivalent to what we have now. Hopefully, I can't be sure, but
Yeah, Dale Wolfensparger in chat is laughing about For some reason, I just got it in my head that it's Compact D, but it's Concept D. Oho, I guess is what it's called. And I don't know if it's Ojo or I pronounce it Oho. I just assume that it's called Oho. So when like the Vive Pro came out, right, and the Samsung, and you got the Samsung Plus, which had the little anti-screen door filter and all that. Did you try any of those, or were you tempted by any of those?
I haven't been able to try that. I'd love to try one of the Samsung Odysseys. A guy I fly with from Australia, he has one. He loves it. That's probably the biggest issue with us now. It's like the resolution, making the gauges slightly fuzzy, not being able to see contacts as far away as some guys on the monitors can. Stuff like that, right? That's the only holdback, I think. So if we can get these high resolution panels and it starts getting equal to what we can get on monitors, I think a lot of people will jump over.
Do you think at some point there's going to, like when we think about location-based entertainment, right? So we have our home experiences, we have our man caves, and you've got a pretty detailed setup there that you got going on. But do you think eventually we're going to be able to go to like a location-based entertainment center and you're going to get into a cockpit and it's going to have all the dials and everything. It's going to have like the glass above you. You could touch it and you feel the glass above you. And it's going to have motion simulator for your chair and it's going to be moving around and stuff. Do you think that's something that's going to happen for like flight sims or racing type setups? Or do you think that it's a little bit too niche for that?
I think it's still a little bit too niche because we can do that now without the VR headsets and stuff like that.
And they're not really doing it.
Yeah, and it is. It's hard to find these, especially when you're unfamiliar with it. Finding all these controls when you have a VR headset on.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm getting pretty good at just reaching out and touching what I need. But but I've been playing for 2 years. So
Yeah, is the field of view like is that an like the field of view, because you're kind of wearing a scuba mask, right? So like imagine you put on a scuba mask and you're inside an airplane, you're trying to look for dials. I mean, your vision's cut off there and you're not you have to like dramatically move your head even further down to see a dial that where if you didn't have that on your head, you'd be able to see it without moving your head so far down. Like that's part of it, right? So an improved FOV might help you out too.
yeah, but the FOV as it is a big improvement over playing with a monitor. Even like a 3 monitor setup, you get a nice wide view, but you still don't have the vertical view. So with a VR headset right now, I can look straight out through the HUD, and I can just glance down and read my gauges and glance back up. And having that one-to-one head tracking just keeps you so spatially orientated, so much more than you could with a monitor setup and a track IR, that it's such a game changer in the flight sim world.
Did you ever have a problem with motion sickness at all?
I did at first. Probably about the first month, I'd still get the like the funny feeling, especially like if I was taking off and banking one side to the other, pulling hard on the stick and looking over my shoulder at the same time. It was just a recipe to make me feel queasy, but I don't feel a thing now. So
Okay. Here's a question for you. So going back over to the Steam page here, DCS World Steam Edition. Like, so what other games are? Well, you said IL Stormovik, right?
yeah, IL2 Sturmovik.
Is it
there's
like
a
the
lot of
Battle of Stalingrad? Is this the one that people would get, or would?
yeah.
Okay.
Hang on, I got a list here. So yeah, the IL2. They have a few different add-ons for that now with different theaters and different airplanes.
So, like, if
And
you were to compare these two, like, do some people prefer this and say, this is better than DCS World?
absolutely, because there is some difference. It's not so much VR differences, but like the damage modeling and stuff like that. DCS World is built more for modern jets with missiles and rockets and bombs, and the IL-2 games are built with bullets in mind, like machine guns on the wings. So the damage modeling is different, and DCS can't handle that kind of damage modeling the same as IL-2. So
I see.
and IL-2 runs a lot smoother than DCS, but the planes aren't as complicated, so you expect it to run a little faster.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
So IL-2 might be a little bit easier for a noob?
For sure. The only thing with IL-2 is, like, most of these sim games have a cockpit you can click around in to flip the switches. IL-2, you actually have to map everything. So,
Oh.
but it's somewhat simplified for new people. Yeah.
Okay, so is there anything else we should mention? Like, what other names should be thrown into the hat?
For combat sims,
Yeah.
let's see. War Thunder, that's
War
free
Thunder?
to play.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's absolutely arcadey. So anybody can jump into that.
Okay. And this one, can
uh,
you be tanks too?
Yes,
Yeah.
tanks, and I think there's ships as well now. I've never played it, so
Oh, okay. So does that
yeah.
not interest you very much? Like, you want to be up in the air?
Yeah, I've always loved anything that flies. So
Okay.
spaceships, airplanes, anything.
Is there any games that are coming like in the future that like everybody in Simland is like, I can't wait till this game comes out? Anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay.
It's like when VR came around, there's sort of like a big groundswell of flight sim stuff, and I don't know if it's just people being more aware, but there has been like a few enhancements to flight sims since VR started, but they might have happened anyway without VR, so it's hard to say.
So like if somebody got into DCS World, right? And so you get the free to play version, but you start adding on all the DLCs for like the extra stuff, right?
Yeah.
But could somebody basically get this and just kind of like this is their game, like they just stay in this and this is it and they just live in this game pretty much?
Oh, for sure. You mean like as a free to play game?
Or just as like people will lock on to a certain game and that's all they play and they don't really even care about like a new upcoming game. Like they're so into this.
Yeah, I've been playing this probably 2 years straight now. So DCS World, different planes though. We've gone from the Spitfire to the Sabre, and now some of us are doing the F-18, and other ones are doing the A4, and a couple of other guys are pairing up in a Tomcat. So we got 2 guys in the same cockpit working together to fly a plane.
Okay. Would it be hard to, I got to imagine it'd kind of be hard to like bounce back and forth between 2 of these, because you would, you kind of, I mean, do you almost like riding a bike or something, you start to, it's second nature, like where different things are. And then if you switch to a different simulator, it's like maybe they do things differently and you're all discombobulated.
No, you're absolutely right, because if you walk away from a certain plane for a while, you start to forget where the details are, like which switch is where and what panel's supposed to do what, and it's a lot of muscle memory.
So
and
do
if
you
walk away?
Do you have a
Yeah.
specific plane that you mostly stick with?
I know, but I stick with each plane for a long time. So,
Okay.
like the Spitfire, we played for maybe 6 months. The Sabre for a year and a half, and now the F-18. Who knows how long we'll be playing that?
Do they have scenarios like World War II or anything like, different like time periods or?
Yeah, they do. They have a Normandy map for World War II. They have the Persian Gulf map for like Desert Storm, stuff like that.
So when you're flying over the terrain, do the buildings like reflect the time period?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, each map is custom made for that stuff. So if you look in that trailer you had playing for a while, you can see Las Vegas because there's a Nevada training map.
Okay.
And Las Vegas has done very well in that map.
Interesting. Can you fly over Area 51?
I'm not exactly sure where it is,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Groom Lake or whatever they call it. Are there UFOs?
Yeah, I haven't seen any yet. Actually, some guy modded in the Independence Day movie. So he had the big spaceship up above the sky, and he did something. I don't know if it was helicopters or something. He changed into the alien fighters. So it was really cool.
Yeah. Man, I had a good question. Now I completely forgot it. Okay, how about this? Like, what do most people assume about flight simulators and they get it all wrong? Anything like that?
I'm not really sure. I'm trying to think of what I assumed about them before I got into them. I assumed they were too complicated for me to learn, and they're not. If you put the time into it, anybody can learn them.
So let's say you start off with a complete and utter noob, never played any of these ever before, has no knowledge of anything. How long do you think it would take somebody like that to get up and running where they can start enjoying these things a little bit?
Yeah, it's going to take probably a month before you know if you're going to like it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a deep commitment,
It is, and it's. I don't want to be authoritative saying that, because someone like me, I knew I'd like it, but yeah, it's really hard to describe.
Well, I mean, you think about pretty much anything on this planet, anything that you get into, the more investment that is required up front, it's just like a deep dive into a video game or just scratching the surface of a video game,
It's not even like a game.
It's
It's like a hobby. As soon as you get into this, it's a hobby, and you spend so much time with your hobbies that it's just becomes part of it. It's like I say, it's really hard to describe.
How often do you play this? Is it like a daily thing? Is it multiple hours a day? Do you play it like every other day?
Probably 4 days a week, at least a couple hours. I mean, it's really hard to get into this and not commit to it for a couple of hours.
Yeah. So if you had 45 minutes, it's probably not worth it.
Yeah, I might do a couple of takeoff and landing patterns or something like
Okay.
that. But like last night, I put the headset on at 7:30 and I took it off at 11:30.
Okay,
and
so
my ass was really sore after that.
Yeah. So let me like, if I was going to criticize this stuff, and I do have an actual criticism for like a lot of flight sim type things, like even like Ace Combat and stuff. Like, my biggest criticism for something like Ace Combat, and I tried the new one. You know, it had a demo for PlayStation VR. I tried it, and it's really cool. You're in the cockpit, and it has this cool feel to it. But my biggest complaint is, like, once you've seen a bunch of blue skies and clouds, like, what else is there? Like, I don't know. I get bored, like, because to me it seems like, okay, you got blue skies, you got puffy white clouds, and then eventually you got a bogey out there. And see, well, a lot of the arcade-based ones, you're basically banking, try to get the bogey. If you can't, you got to bank again, try to get the, you know what I mean? And it's repeat.
Yeah.
What would you argue to that?
Well, I might have had the same thinking at one time, but once you start flying with a group of people and you start working together, it becomes so much more than that it makes the whole experience worthwhile. Like the whole experience of learning how to fly these planes, how to work together as a team. The arcade games, yeah, I can see that, and that's probably why the hardcore flight simmers don't play the arcade games just to relax, because it's just not what they want out of their time.
So you're playing this multiplayer style with like a group of other people. In your little squadron that you have, how many people are in it when you're typically doing this?
About 10, maybe.
Oh, really? So like 10 different planes flying out there, each with an individual person controlling it?
Yeah. Well, except for the F-14, because that's got 2 guys in it.
Ah, okay. And
Yeah.
so you're doing this now. Are you going up and battling another group of 10 people, or?
We have right now, because we're learning new planes. We're sticking to our own server and just doing training stuff. So not hardcore training stuff, but we're learning how to operate the weapon systems and how to track a target on radar and just stuff like that.
Do you feel you're going to ever be called into the Navy to act?
No.
I mean,
first of all, I'm too old.
Oh, yeah. But you remember the movie? What was that movie where it was like The Last Starfighter, right? You know, they set up that? They set up a video game machine, and it's like, we're going to find the next pilot just by finding out who can play this the best. Do you think there will ever be a time, though, where like the cockpit sims will be so good and you'll have like physical cockpits and everything where you could take a sim person and throw them in a plane, or you think it's just complete apples and oranges?
I think it's absolutely possible, because these sims are getting so realistic now that, except for like the feelings you have when you're actually in the air and stuff like that, all the other procedures are there. So
yeah,
I'm sure if you can get by without actually getting airsick trying to fly one of these planes, I don't see why you couldn't fly it.
But there's the difference of your life is now literally in danger. You have left planet Earth, and then
So you better remember everything you learned in that sim.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's all. And there's not just combat games too. There's like civilian flight sim games that support VR.
Yeah, remember?
And support that.
Well, I was just going to say, remember the Microsoft Flight Simulator? Remember that?
Oh, for sure. Like Flight Simulator 10, way back years ago. They got a VR mod, so that was my first civilian sim in VR. And that one's pretty clever, because you can import windows from your computer and manipulate them within the game. So you have all these charts and stuff you might need right in the game with you.
So is there a current version of that, or what, like, people that want that experience, what are they playing?
They're playing FSX, Flight Simulator X, and they're getting the Fly Inside mod for Flight Sim X.
So it's FSX. Is that on Steam? I'll look it up real quick.
That is FSX Steam Edition.
FSX. Okay.
Hang on, let's get a drink.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So this is really interesting. Oh yeah, Microsoft Flight Simulator Steam Edition.
Yep.
Is it this one? The Piper Aztec add-on?
Yeah.
FSX
well, it
Steam?
comes with a bunch of planes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And like the flight simulation hobby, it's the flight sims themselves make money, but the whole market is in all the add-ons you get for the flight simulators. And in some cases, like FSX, the add-on is a VR mod.
I see. Do these interest you much?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have them all, I think.
Have you ever
I
thought about like actually trying to get some time at or like actually taking flight training and like actually getting in a real airplane?
Absolutely, but there's nothing close by anymore. Um, a fellow I know, he had his license. He took me up back in 1998, 99 in his little Cessna that wasn't big enough to change your mind. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, but I love that. And that's what after that, I wanted to recreate that. But the flight simulators at the time just couldn't do it. They just didn't have the graphics power to do it. So, and now it's finally caught up. And it's like since 2011, when I got back into this, I could see, holy crap. I mean, these games are starting to look realistic now. And VR just adds on that just exponentially.
Okay, so here's my question for you. What do you think could be like, is there something you're hoping for with either the next like in a future software thing, possibly a DLC add-on for this, or maybe a completely new game that you've never even heard of before? Is there something you're hoping for on the software side? Is there something you're hoping for on the hardware side, in terms of like HOTAS or tracked HOTASes or seats or like rumbling type chairs or like the headset? Like, what do you think is the most important? Like, when you think of like what could take this experience to that next level?
I think tracked gloves is the next thing for flight simulators.
Ah,
If I could like grab my throttle and stick and without even having to worry about picking up a controller, just point to what I want to flip and maybe have a little buzz in the finger when I'm touching it and quickly flick it up and it flips a switch, that'd be awesome.
interesting.
Yeah, because with like X-Plane now and Fly Inside, they're two other civilian sims. You can use your motion controllers to play with the dials and switches. So, and you can like with X-Plane, you can grab a dial, and as you're twisting it, you can feel the rumble in the controller. And I said, why can't we have that in a glove?
Yeah, so like X Plane 11, would that be it?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, that has native VR support as well.
Okay,
But but you don't even need a flight stick or anything to play that. You can play it all with the motion controllers.
I see.
Yeah.
What about, well, one thing I've always harped on, and a million different times I say, we've got VR, it's awesome, but we're basically the invisible man. We've got our head and we've got floating hands. And I've always talked about, I want our bodies to actually be in VR. Like, I want to look at my arm and be like, that's my goddamn arm. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
want to look at my hands. I want to see scars and little marks on my hand. Like, I think that is a powerful part of the overall immersion, right? And so now I'm thinking, well, if I was sitting in a cockpit and you're reaching for this lever or that lever, like, wouldn't it be kind of awesome if you were seeing like your real arms? Like, wouldn't that add so much more?
You could. I think it could be done very easily because the sim already knows you're sitting, right? Your movements are kind of limited to within the confines of the cockpit anyway. So why not have inverse kinematics from your feet on the rudder pedals all the way up to your arms where you're reaching out and touching something? I absolutely possible, and they might not even have to make it with you in mind. Just have a generic model that you can import your own skin texture into, and
Exactly,
there you
yeah.
go. Yeah.
So but no one's tried this yet? Like, is anybody trying to do anything with inverse kinematics?
Um, I don't think so. The models that come with the game might follow the rudder pedals. I'm not sure because, to be honest, I turned the pilot off because he gets in the way of seeing switches and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Because his arms don't move like mine, and I need it to move out of the way, but it won't until we get inverse kinematics.
Yeah.
So,
But like, I think if you also combine that with the gloves you're talking about, because you would want a little bit of haptics on the tips of your fingers, I'd imagine.
well, yeah, I just a little buzz would be perfect, just to say, okay, you're touching that dial you want to reach now, and then just give it a twist, and you're turning the dial.
Okay.
Yeah,
So what about like, so for the headset standpoint, are you in the market to upgrade your headset? Or have you been kind of watching things and biding your time a little bit here? Do you think
I'm
you?
I'm
Oh, go ahead.
I'm biding my time because I just got that 2080 Ti, so my budget is shot right now.
Yeah,
So,
talk about that. So you did grab a
sorry,
2080 Ti.
sorry. No, it
Oh,
was a 1080
10,
Ti. I'm
1080 Ti.
sorry, misspoke.
But no,
But
it'll break your budget too. Like
yeah,
this is a very expensive hobby. And see, for you, the good news is you're not buying every other game under the sun. You're pretty much sticking with one game. The bad
yeah,
news
yeah,
is you got to buy a lot of hardware. The good news is you actually know how to make some of this stuff yourself, so that's cool.
yeah, yeah. I'm not talented like some of the guys are, but yeah, I'm very lucky in that I can see something and say, yeah, I can make that. So yeah.
Cool.
But there was another question in there somewhere, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I don't remember either. Well, I mean, just like looking into the future of this and like where you think things need to go. I mean, we were talking. You mentioned the gloves. You think tracked gloves is a way to go. Facebook
Yep.
has like, I mean, we've seen the Facebook Reality Labs. Obviously, there's that famous picture of Mark Zuckerberg. He has these gloves on, and recently it was Jason Rubin that talked about if we if they eventually go to an Oculus Rift 2, they want it to be such a major movement for like a real game changer. And so maybe you go with a completely different kind of an input idea where you do go to these gloves. Are you kind of hoping that maybe that, like in your particular situation, are you hoping that something like that comes down the pipe, or are you going to look more towards third party companies that might create something?
Um, if a third party comes out, whoever comes out with it first, that's the one I'll go with because I think this is essential for this hobby.
Do you think they'll get it right though on the first
Well,
try?
okay, whoever comes out with it first and gets it right, I guess I should
Yeah.
add that caveat.
Because I was at GDC, right, and you know that company Tactical Haptics, they got these big things that you hold in your
Yeah,
hands, and I tried those, and you know, well, see, I didn't get the VR demo. I got the non-VR demo where I was just holding it and they had it on a screen and I was trying different stuff, and you know, I got to feel it, but they're just so damn heavy, you know. You're like, I don't think you could use them for very long. And then also
okay,
I felt like the actual movements weren't gonna trick me in any major way. Like it's like, yeah, it's doing some different things, but I don't know. I kind of think like gloves are probably like, you know, a number of people have these ideas of gloves with like little tiny bubbles that inflate and then
yeah,
deflate, you know.
yeah, and like to get the so it actually feels like you're grabbing onto something. Um, that's so hard to do. I don't know if we'll ever get that, but like pull that off to where it's actually convincing.
What about, could somebody create some type of I guess it's such a niche to try to do it, but almost like a steel battalion controller that's designed specifically. It wouldn't be a controller, it would be like a facade almost, you know, that you would
Okay,
set it
uh,
up in front of you and it'd have all kinds of dials and stuff, but it wouldn't maybe
that's
cost $1,000.
yeah, that's a really good idea. So just using your track gloves to tell it where the stick is and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
Without all the electronics inside.
yeah, yeah.
That's a really good idea. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually, yeah, interesting. Okay, well, you know, yeah, lots of interesting stuff to talk about here. I need to kind of get out of here. We're having a great discussion, but I kind of need to get out of here. But before I go, Conrad, so is there anything else you maybe like wanted to talk about, like any other talk? Oh, well, you know what? In chat, somebody was saying like I am Roots, which I called I am Ruts for a million years. He's saying
Yeah.
bad news is you're missing out on so many good games because you're dialed in to DCS. You're missing out on all these other things. Like, what do you think about somebody that would say, dude, you know, you didn't play Transference, you didn't play Pixel Rip 1989, or you didn't play, you know, all these other action games. Do you ever flirt with any of these other games just for like 5 or 10 minutes to see what they're about, or they just don't do it for you?
No, they'd be absolutely right. I didn't play those games. But I did play. I do buy a fair bit of games. Um, but that's why I watch VR 365, and that's why I watch Roots show, As so, I might not play them myself, but I kind of get to play them through you guys. So
Yeah, no, that's a valid thing because
yeah,
way before I ever started doing this, I would listen to just countless gaming podcasts. And there's so many games I've never actually played myself, but I've listened to it in so many podcasts that I feel like I have played the game. So, I mean, it's kind of true.
yeah.
That's true. And you see
Like
trailers and all
Fisherman's
that.
Tale. Yeah, Fisherman's Tale. I bought Profundum. Red Matter's one I'm going to buy one of these days when it goes on sale. So I do play other VR games for sure.
Yeah. Of all these other games that you've played, like is there any that really like if somebody said, "Hey, Conrad, what's the best VR game?" but they don't, they're not interested in flight sims or something. And they said,
Uh,
"What's the best VR game you've played that's not like a flight sim?" What would you tell them?
does Jet Island count?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Jet Island for sure. I've spent I don't know probably 80 hours in Jet Island.
Wow, wow.
I was a tester on it. I was in it from the beginning, but yeah, I love Jet Island.
So you've seen the brilliance that Main Fan knows about, like going up there with the bosses and all that. Have you been able to deal with all those crazy bosses?
Oh yeah, yeah, um, yeah. Because they weren't in there from the very beginning. In the very beginning, there was nothing but ramps and stuff like that. So the bosses were added one by one. We got to play each one before the whole game came together. So it was quite the experience working with Eric on all that stuff.
Do you think your flight sim background helps you a little bit with that game in certain
Oh,
ways?
it definitely helped me with the motion sickness. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the sense of speed in that game is incredible. If you look it up on Steam right now, you'll see it's got well over 400 reviews and mostly positives. And I don't know why the community doesn't talk about Jet Island more because I think it's a fantastic game with a movement system nobody else has ever tried. And I think everybody should love it. And I don't know why they don't.
Y-
Just like flight sims, I guess.
Yeah, well, you know what I think it is probably is it's one of these games where you're not going to find its beauty on the surface, You've got to invest time and effort into to find its beauty. Like me, I mean, Main Fan would probably criticize me and say that, all I did was just kind of run around in it like it's a skate park, which is pretty much what I did. And I didn't
Yeah.
really get up there and try to deal with bosses and stuff. I just kind of like screwed around. You know where I had my most fun with Jet Island is like, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this as well, but probably not with flight sims. It's probably hard to do that. But like, I'll just play in some kind of VR game where it's almost like meditation. Like I'm just kind of screwing around in a VR world and I just start thinking the deepest possible thoughts. And like Jet Island was really good for me for that. Like I'm just kind of like going along the countryside and flying up in the air and just kind of like going all around, but like thinking like really deep, introspective kind of thoughts in the VR.
I had the same experience except for the deep thoughts. I was just wondering how high you get off a ramp or something like that. But so we get in the half pipes and see how high we could get with each launch from the half pipe. To at one point early on in the game, I managed to reach one of those floating islands without any other way to get there but the half pipe, just by
Yeah, yeah.
going back and forth and building up speed as I went.
Yeah, I got to
So,
get back
but
to that game.
it's a fantastic game. I hope it comes to other platforms. I hope he updates it. Um, yeah, because I'll put another 80 hours in there if I could.
Alrighty, Conrad. Well, man, I gotta say, thanks so much for joining us today. This was definitely an interesting interview. I honestly, like, before this interview started, I was kind of like, oh man, I don't know anything about DCS World. But you know what? There's always interesting places you could take an interview, even though I don't know anything about it. I
Yeah,
still think we had a pretty good interview here. So thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
no problem. And I know you don't like the flight sim games. You don't like looking at clouds, but every new plane you get into is a new environment. So
That's true.
that's the way we look at it. So we're learning a new environment every time we get in a new plane.
Absolutely. Alrighty, guys. Well, okay, Conrad, what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and hang up on you, but thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. This was awesome. I'll probably have to have you back on again. Maybe if there's
Anytime.
some new flight sim thing that comes out, or you get some new bit of hardware that changes things for you, we could definitely have you back on and talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to get a new headset and compare it to what I've been playing now, and if that ever happens, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, well, take it easy, Conrad. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, well, that was Conrad Lawrence. Really appreciate that. That was pretty awesome. Glad to have him on the show. And that's basically going to do it, guys. Today is Sunday Funday, and man, I've been going for a while here. What's the time on this show? Yeah, 1 hour and 14 minutes. So yeah, kind of a long show, long day, but that was pretty good. So, even if you're not a fan of certain categories, you can still interview people and still find out a lot of things. So we got some good information there. I didn't really think about the glove factor and how that could possibly be a game changer and just the different ideas there. And just so many angles to cover VR from. So it's always interesting to get other people's thoughts. Also his past history, being a console gamer, going over to PC, kind of going back and forth a little bit there. And so a lot of interesting angles to take a look at. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for this particular episode of VR 365 Live. Make sure to go ahead and hit the like button on your way out, guys. And if you're not subscribed to this show, make sure to see your local psychologist to figure out what the problem is. And other than that, we will be back. So let's see, tomorrow, Monday, I believe is going to be a 4 p.m. Pacific start time for tomorrow, Monday. And then Tuesday, tentatively scheduled, but hopefully it sticks. Tuesday evening, we're going to have a show. It's going to be 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central. And I am going to have Alex from Play PSVR, the podcast, joining me. And we're going to kind of do the state of PlayStation VR. Past, present, future. What are his all-time favorite PSVR games? Like, what's the best stuff that's been coming in the last 90 days? We're going to talk about PSVR 2. Basically, it's just going to be an hour or a little bit longer of nonstop PSVR discussion. I think it's going to be really interesting. So that's scheduled for Tuesday. Tomorrow, 4 p.m. Pacific, just a regular show. Don't know really what's going to be going on, but we'll figure something out. And so I'll see everybody then. So everybody have a wonderful weekend. Take it easy. Later.